Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Voices of Orion Project. I'm Nate, and I'm here with the amazing Diane. And tonight we're going to be talking about Lucifer, psychic super soldier attacks in the New World Order. So go for it, Diane.
Oh, good on you. You were going to make me do the introduction, and now you just what am I supposed to say? What did you want to talk about?
All right, well, I'll start out. Okay, so anyway, I've been talking to some very unusual people that are just like myself. So technically, they're not that unusual to me. But, the conversations that I have with these people, if there was somebody that was sitting on the outside, like somebody from the NSA, for example, which are the ones who are actually listening when I have these discussions, is that they would think that we are completely crazy and that there's something wrong with us because it's compartmentalized. But they're actually part of the same Luciferian type of machine that is destroying this earth right now. And what I wanted to talk about is a psychic attack that I had. And this is the way it went. I had a 2 or 3 hour discussion with someone, and he was explaining to me a little bit about how Lucifer was an actual entity, and that the elites are trying to use CERN and other types of technology similar to that, which also explains why they do these Luciferian rituals. Was that the grand opening of CERN that they did that for? Because I know they've done several, right?
That was bizarre. I remember watching that going, what did I just watch? Was that some kind? Look, honestly, have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've actually seen 2 of them. I saw one that was like it was like an unannounced one. I think it wasn't like a big audience or anything, but it was done at nighttime. But then they had the big opening one, and then there was some kind of mass transit, like underground road, or I don't know if it was I don't know if it was for a road or a train, but the elites had this really big, it was like the longest tunnel in Europe. Do you remember that? They had this, They had the same thing. It was like this Luciferian ritual. And then you had the Super Bowl halftime show here in the US a few years ago, where I think they turned the lights out for 33 seconds.
Yep.
Now 33 is the 33 scumbag banking families of the Federal Reserve. You've got 33rd degree masonry. I mean, it's 33 is kind of like a number that shows up. But anyway, I'm having this interesting discussion with this person, and I'm getting new information. And some of the information I'm not quite sure about. Some of the information conflicts with certain things that I've already thought that I'd nailed down. But there was a core of it that was striking, and it really resonated with me. And it had to do with this Lucifer character. So I remember this Farsight video. It was just about Lucifer. It was like a 90 or 80, 90 minute remote viewing documentary about Lucifer. And so anyway, let's just get down to explaining what happened with the psychic attack. So anyway, we have this discussion. Less than a week goes by, and he sends me an email. And the email, I wasn't quite sure what he meant. He mentioned something about Ashtari, and I wasn't 100% certain what he meant by it. But as soon as I opened the email and I got about halfway through, and I read the part that I wasn't understanding, I got hit with all this negative energy. And it was a type of psychic attack that I had years ago when I was in that Joy of Satan group, which is interesting. By the way, the Joy of Satan is not Luciferian. It isn't even really satanic. It's essentially an extraterrestrial program masquerading as a satanic cult. It's an Enki EA cult. And while it uses some satanic themes, for the most part, it's a pagan cult that is being run by extraterrestrials, and they're running various programs out of that. We're going to be talking about that next week, and in depth, by the way. And I'm going to get into how all of the contact scenarios that we had in that group are identical to what contactees go through. The only difference is that it was wrapped in a theological wrapper. Some of it was, and not even really a satanic wrapper, more or less just a pagan cult sort of facade. Anyway, pushing that aside, I got hit with this negative energy, and it was the type of energy that's actually programmed that gives you a concept along with the negative feeling. And it lasted a while. Initially, I was remembering back, I thought it lasted about a half hour, but actually it lasted a couple of hours. And I just had this bad feeling, and I thought this person was upset with me. Like there was this conflict between their opinions or their views or in, mine. And it was just all of this bad energy. And it lasted for a little bit, for a few hours. And as I was processing it, Ashtari pops in and says, think about how you feel. I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, it feels like he's mad at me. He goes, no, there's more to this. He's being attacked. He's getting psychic attacks. And what you felt is what he's going through. And then I started to go back and I started to think, when I got into the Joy of Satan, they would stage these psychic attacks. So you were constantly being hit with these things, and you had to know your mood. You had to know yourself, and you had to know when things weren't right and where you were feeling something that wasn't you. And it was out of the context of what you should be feeling in your normal everyday life. And so I immediately was able to look at that and say, okay, I know what this is. And I wasn't quite sure why it was happening, because, I haven't been attacked like this since, I guess 2006, since after I left the group. And I was told that I was protected against this stuff. And there's another thing too that I've noticed too, because when we got attacked, it was staged. That means the ETs that were working with us were actually creating these attack scenarios. So I went into the Voices of Orion project thinking that we're in this closed loop system, which is the planetary consciousness simulation, and that all the attacks that contactees or starseeds are going through are manufactured, they're staged, just like I went through, and it's being done by their guides and their life engineers as a kind of a teaching and conditioning tool, when in fact there's a lot more to it than that, because that's the way it was for us when I was in that, satanic, or actually when I was in the Joy of Satan ET pagan cult. So it's just a way to sugarcoat it, because it has this satanic stigma to it. So if anybody's thinking that I'm some sort of a covert devil worshiper, I think after these next couple of podcasts, I think that'll dispel that. So
come on, Nate, put away that pentagram. I saw it before.
Oh, well, no, this is the Eye of Ra to go with the Egyptian stuff. I know. Should have said, hide the black candle I got in my pocket or something. Is that a black candle or you? Yeah. It's like saying, hey, is that a black candle, or are you glad to see me? So anyway,
good. Sorry, keep going.
So getting back to where I was, I'm in this debate with myself, okay, this was a psychic attack. So where did it come from? And he wasn't telling me right away, but he told me that this is the same type of entity that has been attacking this other person, and that there's a group of them and it's a concerted effort. And so anyway, I started to think, and as I started to break it all down, he started to come in and explain some things. And then what he did was he explained that what this was an attack that they allowed to happen because they do protect some of us. And for example, Diane, have you ever had a psychic attack like that?
I've had a few over the time. Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Okay. Can you describe at least one of them so I have an idea of what you've been through?
There was one when I was getting woken up in the middle of the night. It was always about 3:30. But see, I get a bit protective about my sleep. So rather than waking up and getting scared, I get really, really pissed off. So I will be waking up like, will you bugger off? Like, can't you come and see me at a decent hour? If you want to sort something out, come and see me when I've got my head together, not when I'm asleep. So yes, I've been through some of that, but the one that I wanted to, because we're talking about the internet in this instance, I would really like to stick with that, if that's okay with you. I had one scenario where I got on and I was looking at med beds, Simon Parks's med beds.
Yeah. Oh, it's not
Okay.
just
I
his.
think I sent no, but I think I sent you a link on it. Anyway,
Yeah.
it wasn't him, but it was connected to his website. And I got on there and I was reading this information. It's going, oh yes, you know, you too can experience this. And I'm thinking, oh, this looks really cool. So I joined up because you had to join up before you could watch the video. So I joined up, paid the money, which was only $20 or something. It
Oh,
wasn't
hey,
much.
hold on a second. That's a different med bed than what other people may have be thinking about. They may be thinking about the med beds that are discussed in um, the whistleblowers from the secret space program. Those are the ones that you get in, and it's like a holographic type of technology that rebuilds you at a cellular level. The one that you were talking about, or at least what I followed from that link, was some sort of almost, I can't say snake oil type of medical stuff because I don't know much about it, but it did have a lot of like really, it had a lot of promises, and it didn't really talk about much of technology wise. It wasn't the med beds that you hear about in the secret space program. It was
Yeah,
something
no,
else,
yeah, well,
like a
this
paid
was actually,
sponsor thing, something to
yeah,
do
well,
with frequencies. Was it? It was some kind of healing thing, but there's no
it
real
is, and that's the
scientific evidence to back
holographic
it up.
one that you're talking about. Yeah, so that
That's
was
the real
one
med
at,
beds.
yeah,
This is
was the one
somebody
was at
taking that
Simon
concept.
Park.
I'm sorry
No,
for interrupting.
well, this didn't have anything to do with the med beds per se. This was attached to his link there, and it was just, oh, have a look at this, you know, or while you're
Mhm.
waiting to find out more about the med beds and whatever, then have a look at this. This is, you know, a thing that you can do that's, you know, reasonably affordable, whatever. So I thought, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll do that. So, but as soon as I joined up and I started watching the video, and it got to the point where it's like, oh, you can experience this and la la la, and we're going to put you in a meditative state, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and then we're going to take you to a spaceship. And then I got, get out of there. Like, my guides, get out of there. And I went, what? Because and I paused it, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? Get out of there. Take your money back. Cancel it. Piss it off. I'm like, okay, I've learned not to argue, because if you argue and if you do the wrong thing, then, you know, and this was so full on. This was just get out
Mhm.
of that now. So I don't think people really understand that they're putting themselves at risk every time they jump on the internet. Okay, you are exposing yourself to different things, and you need to protect yourself. I mean, I worry about our kids because they're on there watching stuff all the time too. And, you know, they're exposed to this stuff and they really don't know what they're doing and what they're bringing in. So anyway, that was I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, you've been hitting around about the internet, and you wanted to say something about it. Are you? Does it have
No,
to do with
that was
this?
it. Just that we're exposing ourselves when you get on the internet and you're looking and you're going to websites and you're reading stuff and you're absorbing stuff, because remember, you have to agree to everything before you have access. Now think about that. They've
Well,
already got you by the short and curlies
I've
there,
gotten,
haven't they?
I've
So,
gotten viruses I didn't agree to,
well,
and Trojans and stuff like that.
well, I know, but that's another aspect. I'm talking on a spiritual level. So, you know, you have to be very careful with what you're looking at. And I don't know about you, but just some things you'll flick through and it's like, no, stay away from that. Don't even waste your time there. Or look at this. Now listen to this, listen to this. Now forget that, forget that, forget that. Okay, now pay attention here. You know, that's how I get treated anyway, and where I get pointed. And as I said, I don't argue anymore. I just do as I'm told.
Well, there's a lot of frauds out there, but then there's a situation that I had where I was directed to go at a
Mm,
subconscious level to this particular cult. And
mm,
then I found myself in an extraterrestrial program, actually a series of programs
mm,
that's being run in broad daylight. We're going to get to that next week. And so anyway, what I was getting back to is yeah, I had this psychic attack, and it was very similar to what I'd been put through and what I would call psychic training back in this Joy of Satan. I really can't even say Orion ET program, because I mean, there's lots of extraterrestrials in that group. There was Greys, there was reptilians, there was Andromedans, there was Pleiadians, there was literally just I mean, it was a galactic federation operation, even though the theology was anti-galactic federation related stuff. They were the bad guys in that theology. The good guys were the old pagan gods, and it was just a we'll have to get into it next week, because there's a psychology behind this, and it's catered to certain types of people that have been put through certain things in their life. And so it's a very complicated subject, but it's going to be quite mind-blowing when we do get to it. But anyway, back to this psychic attack. So I had the psychic attack, and then it was explained to me that this was let through. And I said, well, what was it? I said, was it artificial intelligence? Was it, what was it, a negative human soul? What exactly was it? I was told that it was a reptilian. And because I'm relatively restricted right now until hopefully the near future, when they allow me to be more psychic and actually get more into this on my own. But so I have to actually go, because I have essentially a guide who's a mentor from everything from diet and exercise to my personal life to absolutely everything to do with this project, and beyond that. And so he was doing it he was using it like a teaching tool, and he was using it to give me an idea for this podcast. So this was something that they arranged, and they allowed this to come through. And I was getting attacked by the same group of ETs that have been attacking this particular person. So I sent him an email, and I said, hey, I said, are you okay? Because when I opened your email up, I got a lot of negative energy. Now, I was kind of beating around the bush, because when I sent this email, it was right after the psychic attack happened and before it was really explained to me. So the way I worded the email is basically saying, are you okay? Thinking there's a possibility that he was upset with me, and I was picking that up. But normally when I pick up things like that, they don't stick with me for hours on end, and they don't literally affect my mood to where I'm struggling with the energy, and I'm struggling with the emotions that it's causing. Because what it is, it's programmed energy that's attached to you, and it's designed to alter your emotional state and to put ideas in your mind that aren't yours, that you have difficulty determining. You don't know the origin, you think they're yours. That's the part of the attack. So, and this happens in hauntings, it happens with ET contact, and it also happens in psychic warfare. And this is how something that's negative, that's out to get you, can persuade you to do something. I could go on and on about hauntings and stuff like that, but it would be a waste of time. What I want to do is get down to what this is. Now, I asked him, and this is after I spoke to Ashtari, and he told me a bunch of stuff. And he also brought up the whole Lucifer thing. And because we had talked about that in a 3-hour discussion, not Ashtari and myself, but this other person who prefers to be left unnamed because he's getting attacked. And there's a large number of starseeds out there that are being attacked, not just by extraterrestrials, but by military psychics. And that's what I wanted to get to next, because what happened was I asked him, I said, look, I said, because he had brought this up and he had mentioned some things about being a targeted individual, and where they would actually target you with directed energy weapons. And there was other people that are very closely connected to him that are getting the same type of attacks, and it's attacking their immune system. It's 3 people in particular. And he talked about half a dozen other people. I think it was maybe 6 or 7 in all he was talking about. So these are 3 out of that group. And I don't know if the others are being attacked like this, but I know that this person, his significant other, and his mentor that he's very, very close to, that has helped him learn a lot of different psychic skills. Because some of us get a mentor, like an Ashtari type person comes into our life, and they help us develop our psychic abilities, and they give us lots of advice, and so on and so forth. But there's people that are working without a guide. And that's what these people are doing. And what they're doing is they're subconscious, they're psychically networking these people together to where they work together and they become like a guide to each other. And that's why this person has a particular woman who's a mentor, who's very, very advanced, and probably about as advanced as you're going to get within the planetary consciousness simulation, because there's only so much they're going to let you do, and there's only so much they're going to allow you to remember. Now, he and I disagree a little bit about that, because when it comes to etheric implants, he believes that he doesn't have one. I know that we all get one, but it's really dependent on how it's programmed. It can be programmed in such a way where it appears you don't have one because it isn't affecting you. But I did remind him, I said, look, if you didn't have something obstructing you, you can access your entire higher self personality. You would remember all of your past lifetimes, your ET existence. It would be too much to handle. So for your own protection, there are restrictions in this augmented reality. So he agreed to that. And but overall, we're all just trying to find out the truth. So I totally respect where he's coming from, and he totally respects where I'm coming from. So we agree to disagree on the small stuff, but we agree in the big picture quite perfectly, actually. And he's been able to come through and give me information that I didn't previously have. And that's why we're doing this podcast tonight. So anyway, the thing that I asked him, and this is the important part about this when it comes to these psychic super soldier attacks, I asked him, I said, can you tell if it's a human soul coming through? Can you tell from the energy? And I said, can you tell whether it's human, AI, or extraterrestrial? I think I left the AI part of it out. And he said, yes, I can. Absolutely. He says the energy is different. The ET energy is different. Not only that, they're much more adept in their psychic abilities. And he said that, he says, but he's had 2 attacks that he brought up. He may have had more, but he had 2 specific attackers. And there was a man with an average build with a crew cut in a military uniform. I didn't ask him what military uniform it looked like. I have to get to that and find that out. But, because we were communicating by email at this point, we weren't having a discussion. And then there was a short, kind of stocky guy that was also coming through with a military uniform on, and they were doing psychic attacks. And he said in the beginning, they were hard to deal with. But he said when it comes to those people, he's reached a point where he's more powerful than them psychically. And it's fairly easy to stop those attacks. But then when those aren't enough, then they bring in the heavy guns, and the heavy guns tend to be reptilians and others. And then you have those that he suspects to also be spiritual entities. And he said something interesting, because we were talking about CERN, and we were talking about the celebrities and this Luciferian cult stuff that they constantly hint around. There's so much imagery out there where they've got their eyes like this, or they do like a triangle symbol and stuff. And right. And then you got the sign like this, which is, it used to be with heavy metal and stuff, but really it's the all-seeing eye symbol. It really identifies who's what and what they're doing. And so we started talking about that. And then we got onto the subject of CERN. And I mentioned that to him, or he might have brought it up first. And what he said the elites are trying to get Lucifer out of this confinement. And I said, well, that confinement has to be a nested consciousness simulation, which is something we talked about in our first podcast, where I was talking about nested consciousness simulations in the spirit world. And we didn't really get into it in depth. We talked about our unusual spirit-related experiences and hauntings and stuff like that. But within the planetary consciousness simulation, there's various nested consciousness simulations, and these are used to trap souls. And this is controlled by an AI, or an artificially intelligent, fully intuitive, transdimensional technological system. And what Ash told me was very interesting, and we haven't talked about this. We just hinted around on it before we started doing this. Before we hit record. So this is new for you, Diane. So what I was told by Ashtari is, and this coincides with the remote viewing of Lucifer by the Farsight Institute. And I'm just going to get to that real quick. I don't want to jump around too much, confuse people, but in that documentary by the Farsight Institute, they talk about Lucifer in many ways being a manufactured entity. It appeared that way, but it also appeared like Lucifer was a real being. And then as they probed the consciousness, they could see that Lucifer was also an archetype, and also came in different forms, and was actually manipulating what they suspected to be the universe itself. But the information in the remote viewing didn't show that. It was just very general, but they also tapped in, and they communicated with reptilians, Orion ETs, the typical villains. And what they were finding out, or actually what they were looking at, from what I could see and what Ash told me, he says they're actually remote viewing metaphorical information. The ETs weren't being honest and forthcoming with what really was going on, but it fits in with what he told me. And what he told me is that this artificial AI system is actually capable, and actually is that Lucifer is actually an AI generated thought form that is inside a nested consciousness simulation within the big envelope of the planetary consciousness simulation. And what it's doing is that it's self-aware. And when I say thought form, I mean it's conscious energy, just like a soul, except it's controlled and programmed by artificial intelligence. So it's possible to do this because when I was in the Joy of Satan, the ET showed some of us how to create thought forms. I wasn't in that group, but I was very connected with the people who were being shown how to create thought forms. And some of the people were creating programmed energy. They were condensing it and programming it to have effects on other people's moods. So there was that, and then there was a thought form that some of the people created that was powering itself by energy. So it was pulling energy from the ambient environment. And some of the other thought forms would last only a temporary period of time, and they would run out of energy. So we were being shown how thought forms worked, and I kind of liken it to the Curse of King Tut, because that was a type of a thought form that they had created that would attack people who opened the tomb up. So that's what a curse is. Essentially, it's programmed energy. It's a thought form, but this is an AI controlled and generated thought form that thinks it's real. It thinks it's alive and it's self-aware, but it only can exist within this nested consciousness simulation. And its job is to manipulate people, us, who are under a controlled state of consciousness. So it's not something that exists outside of this world. And I said, well, what would happen if eventually, when this technology is shut down and humanity's liberated from it, the Starseeds go home and we're no longer here, and humanity has a transdimensional reality? And I was told, well, that this is essentially a program that they're going to run, and they are running on other planets where the extraterrestrial citizens are placed in engineered lifetimes with amnesia to experience a primitive reality in an augmented state, where they can't remember where they came from, how they got there, and the planet or the civilization itself has no history because it's repetitively experiencing cataclysmic events. So they literally reboot the planet just like they reboot your consciousness, and they wipe it clean. So you have no memory of self when you arrive in this augmented reality, and you're put into an engineered lifetime, and the civilization has no memory of itself except all the way back to the last cataclysm, but really nothing after that. And that's what we've got here. It's a 6,000 to 7,000 year loop that we keep going through. And that's about the time it takes for humanity to get to the point where we start to concoct technology to blow ourselves up, so the ETs step in and they create a flood, an impact event. They destroy us for us. And if not, they'll let us do it, and we'll have an Atlantis type event. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. So what do you think, Diane? It appears that what he's saying is that this individual I've been talking to is very much correct, that the elites are attempting to use CERN and other technologies to free this entity that they perceive as being independent of this consciousness simulation, which they're probably not aware of or only partially aware of, and they don't understand. And this is the very top of the food chain. These are the evil people that run this world. These are the people trying to create a new world order. And at the top, it appears clearly that these people are Luciferian occultists. So it appears that, that's what I've been told, is that the extraterrestrials have created an archetype, but it's a thought form. It's a conscious, self-aware thought form controlled by AI that's parading itself around as this evil entity, or sort of evil. It's really subjective, but it's really service to self. And that this entity and others, like the reptilians and other what we consider to be negative ET groups, as well as human souls. And I was also told this too, that there's human souls in this planet, in this nested consciousness simulation. So you have trapped extraterrestrial souls in an augmented state of consciousness inside a nested consciousness simulation. You've got human souls that are negative that are also in this nested consciousness simulation. And then you have this AI generated thought form going by Lucifer or Satan that's in there as well. So what do you think? Because this explains a lot. It also explains what Farsight was remote viewing, because this is, we are in, we are about, I don't know, 75, 80+% into this new world order. We're seeing it now. People are actually seeing that there's an orchestrated effort to murder 95% of the world's population and merge with machines for the elites and create this Orwellian hellhole new world order, which is all based on the communist Chinese party system, but well beyond that. Something that Hitler would look at and say, I need to be against that because even I am not that sick. What do you think? I mean, this goes beyond Hitler.
Well, Hitler's part of it, really, isn't it? I mean, he's just one of the scenarios in a long line of.
He's a step in the progression to this.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, look, nothing that's happening now is new. It really is just being rethought, regurgitated, and then put out there as a form of entrapment. Realistically, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about entrapping us into the wrong realm, really, isn't it?
Well, it's about suppressing our freedoms. It's about killing us off. It's about creating a horrible reality. But I'm referring to not so much that's the effects of these people. But what about the concept of an artificially generated, self-aware thought form?
That's Luciferian. I don't know about that one because Lucifer's a bit older than AI, isn't it?
Yeah, but no. I mean, if you think about it, how far does Lucifer go back? I mean, there's various forms of it in what we have. All the religions that are older than Christianity. You always have some type of
Enlil. You've got Enki and Enlil, and Enlil was supposed to be the bad guy, wasn't he? Or was it Enki was the bad guy? But
not
Enki
like
wasn't
this,
really the bad guy. Well, I don't know. That's how they've portrayed it, though, haven't they? Well, there's always been a bad guy and a good guy. There's always been a black and a light and a dark. There's always been that.
You could say right now. You could say Horus and Set. You could say Set was the Satan character that kind of predated the Lucifer, or the the whole Satan character. But the ETs
There's supposed to be no AI back then, was there?
Well, no, there was, because I'm not talking about the AI that we possess, but in order to create this planetary consciousness simulation and to stage all of this, you have to have extraterrestrial AI, which is running this whole system. And Farsight's been great because they've been remote viewing this stuff. Now, you haven't seen the one where they actually remote view what happens when some of us, when our life ends and we leave our physical shell and we basically get zapped and they erase our memory and then they recycle us in a soul recycling system. That's what happens to the people that are either placed here that are not allowed to leave, or those who essentially are from this planet or native to it in a perpetual reincarnation system. See, the way I was explained to me, and I keep hitting this microphone, is that 2/3 of the population are native souls to this planet, and 1/3 are the visiting starseeds. And the majority of the starseeds that are being sent here go home. They may have to repeat this lifetime more than once. Sometimes they go back for a period of time and then are sent back. Other times they're just recycled right back into it. And then you have prisoners, which are recycled back and over again until they reach a point where then, they feel that they've been rehabilitated. And there's a lot there that I still don't have. But then you have the regular people who get recycled and everything like that. So anyway, they're remote viewing that stuff and they're bringing it to light, which is great. But here's the thing. I mean, okay, so, but you're really not answering my question. What do you think? Do you think it's possible? I guess you're kind of torn.
You mean, do I think it's possible everything you've just said?
That absolutely. That this is being staged in an augmented reality. This is like cosmic level Fantasy Island. If you haven't checked out that show, watch it on YouTube. Do you remember Fantasy Island? Did you ever get a chance to see it in Australia? Okay, it's pretty much like we're watching the same television. It doesn't matter what country you're in. If you speak English, you'll see Fantasy Island. So anyway, it's like a cosmic level Fantasy Island, except the difference is when we land on the plane, we completely forget where we came from. So the whole week that we're there, we have no idea. We think we've always been there. But they've created this augmented reality. And so then what they're doing is they're creating a battle between, between the forces of good and the forces of evil. And we have to save ourselves. So I didn't think this was the case, but it apparently is. It would explain a lot of what's going on. And what I question is, and it's not even really a question. I mean, it's been answered for me, but not in the way that I'm satisfied with it. I haven't seen it for myself. I haven't remote viewed it. I want to get your opinion on it. Do you think that this Lucifer entity that they've created is actually in communication with these elites, along with these other actors around it, and is pushing this agenda? That is
Absolutely.
manipulating these elites to all come together and to create something that's hell on earth?
Absolutely, but this has been, again, going on for thousands of years. So you've just had the Passover. It's like passing the baton, passing the Lucifer baton from one generation to the next, and they're actually born into it. And it becomes, the whole sacrificial stuff that they were doing becomes accepted, and it's normal in their groups. And I mean, whereas you and I would watch it and we'd be horrified, to them it's just a normal part of life, and it's just what you do to get ahead, because you've got to appease this evil entity, AI, whatever you want to call it. It's an energy, and it's a very, very strong energy, and it can be I think it can be misinterpreted too. Yeah, I know, but it can also be misinterpreted too, because you can do, when you're doing meditations, and years ago I was doing a meditation and I had a dark energy, and it scared the crap out of me when it first came in. But then I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to explore this a little bit more. And even though the energy was dark, it wasn't actually asking anything from me. It just wanted to be acknowledged, I guess. So I kind of acknowledged it. And as soon as I did, it was like the darkness wasn't as bad, and it kind of all faded away. You know what I mean? It wasn't what I thought it was. So maybe even we've created this. Who knows? Maybe
feeding into it. Well,
absolutely,
we are doing a substantial part of it, and that's obvious, because it takes cooperation to pull this off. You have to give into it, and it's service the self. So it's an intelligent thought form generated by AI, which is creating this entire consciousness simulation that keeps us limited to the five senses, which makes it a lot harder to fend this shit off and actually recognize that we're more than just physical bodies having an experience that's completely meaningless. Like an atheist would tell you, it's like, okay, you're just a collection of cells that have just randomly evolved, and none of this means anything. And it's no different than what they're preaching now, which is a computer simulation. You're just avatars in a computer video game, and we can kill indiscriminately, and it doesn't mean anything. It just means if we mass murder an entire civilization, this is Neil deGrasse Tyson's logic here, and Elon Musk and the rest of them, then it's just like you deleted a bunch of characters in a video game, and none of it matters. Love is meaningless. None of it means anything. And really, we can talk about the computer simulation too, because that really just devalues the meaning of life. It devalues everything, and it makes it completely worthless. And that's why it's popular.
That's right. But that's also why it's here. And that's part of why the internet's been introduced. And, it makes access easier. It makes control easier. Look what it's doing to the kids. And we all sit back and we all think, oh yeah, look at that. They're playing games. Oh, that's great. They're killing people online. Oh, and it's so graphic. Some of this stuff is really quite disturbing. But it's all in good fun, apparently. It's all in good fun. It's not that they're desensitizing our children or anything. No, it's not that at all. It's all good fun. Yeah, no, I don't think it's good fun. And I actually think it's quite evil. There you go.
No, I get frustrated when I watch television, and I have Ash pops in, Ashtari. He asked me to call him Ashtari. And anyway, yeah, it does. See, Ash just sounds like just some guy I know. And Ashtari sounds like either a Hindu or somebody from another planet. So anyway, yeah, I'm watching TV, and I don't watch much TV because I get disgusted by it. And I can see how they weaponized everything. And I'm just watching a typical sitcom that's supposed to be funny, and they're pushing all these negative behaviors and normalizing it. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching it, and I'm picking it apart in my head, and he's joining in. and he's pointing out the same things. And I'm saying, oh, so, and I'm just kidding around with him. I'm asking rhetorical questions. Oh, so it isn't just me, huh? You see this too? And he says, absolutely, I see it. It's weaponized, and it's designed to condition you to act in a certain way, and in a negative way.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it must be nice to live in a world where none of that's happening and things are better. And I said, what's the television like there? And he said, it's positive. He says, you know, you have like a love story is a love story. It's normal stuff. It isn't weaponized, and because nobody would tolerate it. Nobody would sit there and say, I'm going to absorb this pollution. You know, they're socially conditioned to do the right thing and to not do that, and to try to achieve a better person, to become a better person. They're trying to achieve that. Everybody's working towards that. Of course, not everybody. Some people are having problems, but then they get help within the system. But the programming that you know we're watching is completely toxic. And then then it's full of these occult symbols.
Yep. And subliminal stuff. And it's been like that since day dot, since they first brought the box out. It's had the subliminal stuff that's been passed through. And I mean, there's no mistake that it's there. It's there for a reason. It's there to control us. It's there to make us, you know, you go to the movies and, oh, gee, I'm going to get a Coke and some chips or some popcorn or something, because they've actually subliminally put it up there for you to see. And you go, oh, yeah, I'll go get that. Yeah, look, it stinks. And we went to a yoga retreat, and there was a lady there who works in advertising, and she didn't really say too much. She was pretty quiet. But when we said, oh, yeah, in advertising, like they do all this stuff, don't they? This is my girlfriend and I. And she's like, yeah, they do. But she said, you really don't understand the extent of it. It's absolutely horrendous now compared to what it used to be years ago. So they're working on stuff all the time to make us more controllable, more malleable, like we're this little bit of putty. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? So best thing to do, folks, is turn off the TV. Don't watch TV at all. Give it a miss, I think.
Or find,
and a lot of people have done
something
that
good
in
and watch
Australia
it.
too.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you knew this, but the nephew of Sigmund Freud was actually hired by the Nazis, and he was hired by various media firms and advertising firms here in the U.S. and abroad to combine psychology with modern media propaganda. And that's what really got Adolf Hitler going, because, you know, now we can combine it with psychology and we can manipulate people to do what we want. And then that developed, and then they brought those scientists and those experts of mind control over here under Operation Paperclip, and of a wide variety of other people. That's how we got the Apollo missions, modern rocketry, and all that stuff. They brought all these people over here that are engaged in war crimes, and gave them immunity from prosecution, and gave them jobs, and made them American citizens. And they set up bioweapons labs on Plum Island. You had them, you know, the Apollo program, and you had a wide variety of other stuff that was set up here, because they wanted to copy what the Nazis had. And then, you know, the Nazis had communication with extraterrestrials as well. And they were setting up this scenario. They were setting up the secret space program, because you have Nazis that left the planet under treaties with extraterrestrials. There's that whole Antarctica aspect to this thing, and that's a whole different subject, but they set this up. So anyway, what about these psychic super soldiers? And this is the part that really burns my ass, because I know, and I was told this over the last 2 years, that there is a psychic war going on between people that are augmented, and this is stuff that's being done to these super soldiers. They're actually, you know, a lot of the different nation states. In fact, they've even admitted that China has super soldiers. So the US media has actually admitted that China has super soldiers, but of course, we're not supposed to have them, and neither do, you know, and of course, Russia has them, but we don't have them, because we're the good people here in the United States. We just fund ISIS and do all these horrible acts and create viruses and other things that, if I talk about, the evil Luciferian cultists in big tech will take this video down and put a strike on it. or they'll continue shadow banning. And that's another thing too. We're being heavily shadow banned right now. It's another thing that's burning me up. We've got more subscribers than we had before, and a fraction of the viewership. We went from, and I'm just getting sidetracked here because I have to say this. When I had just over 100 and some subscribers, I had about 3 or 4 times the views, and we got to about 175, which isn't that much. But when you're shadow banned, that's an accomplishment. Got to know in like the 170s, we were getting about 200 views per video. Now we got 231, and which is the last time I looked, and we're getting about a view per hour. So within a couple of days, we got 30 views on the last podcast. Granted, that wasn't our best podcast, but if it wasn't, we'd still get the same amount of views. They'd only be watching it for a couple of minutes and say, this sucks, I'm bored with it. But it's quite obvious. They are actively shadow banning this channel. When I upload these videos to other platforms where we've got 6, 8, 10, 12, maybe 20 subscribers, the view count is 5 to 7 times higher. Nobody's getting the notifications. Nobody's leaving comments. There's no discussion under the videos. There's no likes. They're deleting the shit. And there's an orchestrated effort to stop us. Now, the question is, why are they going after us doing this little podcast?
Goodness knows.
And why are they attacking people? Because here's the other thing I didn't mention too with this other person. I asked Ash Tari, I said, okay, I don't want to feel bad here because, I know that I'm a target. Did I in any way influence these attacks to get worse? And he says, absolutely. He says, it's not your fault. But anybody that connects herself with you that's already getting attacked and doesn't have some kind of protection is going to potentially experience attacks. It's going to ramp up.
Yeah,
and
but
that's
why?
Because they don't want people like us gathering together. They do not want that. And
there are already lots and lots of groups of people gathering together. There's even huge,
and they target them
online
too. And they target them too. Yes, because I asked this person, and I wish they felt safe to give an interview. And it's obvious that they can't, because things will get worse. Because when you were being attacked to the point where you have a near-death experience, is what this person reported, or you're becoming fatally ill from the condition that they're inducing in you. And it's not just you, it's happening to 2 other people in your circle of peers, all of whom are starseeds, all of whom are psychic, and all of whom have a special purpose in life to fulfill. And I can understand why they wouldn't want to go public. So I have to be their mouthpiece. And I know there's many, many other people out there, and I'm speaking for them because somebody has to speak for them. These people are being attacked. It is wrong and it is bullshit. And the reason that the government is doing this, and the reason that they're actually taking people and making and training them to be psychic, and actually using they're actually getting help from the ETs. The ETs are reprogramming their etheric implant to give them these psychic abilities. They may also be augmented by technology and drugs and other types of mind control programming to do this crap. And these are willing stooges. These are willing assassins. These are bad people that are in bad programs doing bad things to people. And they're attacking us because they do not want us to get together, because they fear what we would do in a large group. And there's a difference between what we're doing, and there's a difference between your run-of-the-mill starseed group. But like you just asked, they are doing it. They are attacking people that are coming together in Project Avalon. They are attacking people that are coming together in other groups. And how they do this, Diane, is that they have the NSA fish for information. And they start watching these groups. And when they go through and they have the AI flag what these people are saying, if it fits a certain criteria, then they start analyzing it with an actual person who can think, but it's compartmentalized. So they're told to look for this, this, and that, and then write a report. It goes someplace else. It goes to a higher level. It's evaluated again, and then decisions are made. Just like when I say something to you back when we were on Facebook Messenger, and I would talk about something, and then I would make a phone call the next day, and I'd bring these subjects up to a friend. And at the moment that I would say exactly what I was talking to you about, I would get sound effects, digital harassment, using the server farms that they built after 9/11, because they didn't have the ability to reach out and harass you like they do now. And people, I had my mother ask me, she said, what makes you so important that they would actually do this to you? I said, I don't have to be that important. I said, you're missing the point. They have the ability to do it to anybody with a couple of keystrokes. All they need to do is know who you are. And when I asked this particular person, when did these attacks start? I said, did they start when you met your friend you call a mentor, which was, I'm not sure what he said. I think he might have said it was 2016 when they met. I'm not 100% certain. I have to ask him again, but he said the attack started before that, a few years before that. And he said it started when he started getting into these online groups where people who are experiencers gather together and they start to talk about what's happened to them. The NSA looks for these people and then they start monitoring them. They put them on a list. I'm on a list. We're all being targeted. You're on a list too, Diane. I mean, we've had some glitches here tonight that's unusual. Skype, I mean, Zoom is frozen up. The screen has been flickering on my end. We've had more and more problems the further we go into this, and it's things that normally don't happen.
Yeah, but you're forgetting I'm in Australia and we have shit internet here. I mean,
why is mine flickering and I can see it?
Well, I don't know. You should have good internet. You've got no excuse, but I've got 100,000 excuses here why mine doesn't work. We're out in the middle of nowhere, and look, honestly, we have our internet service will drop out for days at a time, 2 or 3 days. It's not unusual. Or you'll be able to ring people, but you won't be able to text them, or you'll be able to text them or not ring them. Honestly, bizarre stuff. But that's normal for here. See, I couldn't read anything into that because it's just normal, which is sad when you think about it.
Hopefully they leave you alone to a certain degree or completely, but I can tell you what.
They probably wouldn't be able to get me because the phone doesn't work properly.
Right, the phone doesn't work, so they get frustrated and they're like, damn it, we just can't get her. If we get better service, she pays more money.
They'll have to come and knock on the door and do it face to face, I'm afraid, because if they're going to rely on the internet here, they're going to have a hell of a time.
No, they can do it like what I was just describing. They can have a psychic super soldier, and these people aren't necessarily super soldiers. They're paid government psychics. They're being trained to attack people, and they're not that good at it. I mean, they're only allowed to go so far. But these people are targeting us, and they also use and this is another thing I was told too. I said, how is it that people who are committing horrible atrocities, these evil elites like Klaus Schwab, can walk around in whatever country he wants to and nobody does anything? Is it that they have such great security? Is the NSA like breathing down everybody's neck? Do they head the threat off before it even really develops? Well, there's a bit of truth. Yes, you could say that. They're certainly getting the NSA to spy for them and protect them, but they've also got another component here. They are using these military psychics, these psychically inclined super soldier people who are there to protect the elites. So they can sense it coming when an idiot like Klaus Schwab can't, but they can. Now,
I don't know. Bill Gates copped a pie in the face there somewhere where he was walking from his car inside some building. Some guy raced up and smacked him in the face with a pie. I'm gone.
Well, I mean, stuff like that, but it's one thing. You know how psychic things come to you. If you were, like for example, if you were getting ready to be in a bad accident or something horrible was going to happen, you'd have that feeling, something's going to happen. And sometimes you can actually, what it is. But then you can go out and then you can walk out in the yard and step on a rock and cut your foot or something, or stub your toe on. And that's like getting a hit with a pie. I mean, or sometimes you get like a sensation that something's going to happen, but you can't tell what it is, and then it just happens. But we're talking about people that are much higher level who can actually, and not just use psychic abilities, but interface their brain with high technology, not as high as the extraterrestrials, but technology derived from treaties with extraterrestrials, where they give them technology. This technology interfaces with your consciousness, and these people are using this to protect the elites, and they're using it to stop people like us, because and this is what I was told by Ashtari as well. He said, people like yourself, starseeds that are active, not people that are just members of forums that talk about, they heard some ringing in their ears and the Schumann resonance is up. And they're just your typical run-of-the-mill person who thinks they're a starseed, or maybe they are, but they're not at a certain level. They're just at the superficial level. They're not a threat. But when you start doing something like organizing people, you start talking about it, you start influencing like we're doing, okay? Then they put you into a different category. And what category you go into is on par with a domestic or an international terrorist. And that has to do with the legislation. If they want information through an encrypted email service that you think is completely safe for you to talk openly about everything that you're dealing with, and you think you've got privacy, and you think it's encrypted, they can go to this company and say, okay, we want to invoke this particular right to get this information because we're fighting international terrorists. So they don't have, and they're not going to tell them, oh, is this like a domestic terrorist, an international terrorist? Who is it? They don't have the right to know, and they're not going to give them that information. It's a need to know sort of thing. But they're putting us in that category with them, and they fish for this information. So if they find that you're doing something, that you're talking about having psychic experiences on a different level than the typical person, then they start watching you. And it's exactly what happened to me after I contacted Rex Bear, who was scared to death and ran off in the other direction. But as soon as I started
I'm thinking
talking
about
to
doing
him,
the same thing. Actually, you've made me pretty uncomfortable. I think I might just end this here, and
well, you can't do that.
Oh, look, honestly, okay, let's just look at a couple of facts. First fact is, if you really believe that anything that you're doing or saying is private right now, you are kidding yourself. And I have this conversation with people. I have conversations with people who believe when they put their stuff in the cloud, it's safe because they have a password for it.
Well, the NSA
This is
keeps
the
a copy
mentality.
for you.
Oh, well, this is the mentality that you're dealing with. So, and then they turn around and I say, but doesn't it bother you that somebody could access that? And they say, oh, well, no, if they're stupid enough to look at stuff like that, well, that's their problem. And that's the mentality of people that you're dealing with. So, and yeah, we do need more privacy because we haven't got any. And basically, you sign that away every time you pick this up. You pick up your phone and you have to say, yes, I agree. Otherwise,
Well,
you can't do
yeah.
anything. I'm thinking even your TV, for shit's sake. Your TV says, do you agree? And if you say no, it won't let you watch TV. That's when you're setting it up. So,
And you had
you're
smart
over a barrel
appliances.
until people actually start saying, look, I'm not happy with this. And I think we need to have a few other rules in place here so that we're not just open slather. And while I'm sitting there watching TV, picking my nose, you can't just flick in and look at me and see what I'm doing. I mean, they shouldn't be able to do that. Bloody Snowden was talking about that years ago. He was part of the people that programmed being able to access your computer when it's switched off and switch it on and turn it on and watch to see what you're doing and what's in your house through your camera on your computer. Now,
Yeah.
how long ago was that? Now he says, yeah, sure, I still use a smartphone, but I take the guts out of it before I use it, and I have an external microphone that I connect to it when I'm making a phone call. So what's that tell you?
Well, when they watch me here through this camera, they see this. Sometimes in the past, I put signs up saying, go fuck yourself, NSA, stuff like that,
Well, that's
but it's
not very
pointless.
nice. That's just mean.
Well, this other person, just as an example, I said, I have said, because we were talking, he says, your energy is very good. I said, well, I have said a lot of nasty things to these people on the phone. He says, oh, don't worry, I have too. Because he gets the same thing, and we didn't get into what sound effects he gets, but he gets the same digital harassment. And like I was saying, my digital harassment started at the end of October of 2019, because on the 27th of September, I sent Rex Bear an email about my ET experiences and about this Joy of Satan, Orion, Galactic Federation, ET created cult that's being used to run various programs out of it. And as soon as I did that, because they were watching that group, in fact, when I was recruited into that group by the group's creator, first thing she did is she told me, she said, hey, everything that we talk about here is being monitored by the government. Watch what you say. Okay.
Wow. Well, she's right though. But I mean, that's
And
everybody
you know why
everywhere.
that is, Diane? You know why? It's because they were on that, and there's a couple of reasons that has to do with the founders' anti-Semitism and the ADL, so that it automatically brings in intelligence agencies. But that's a whole separate issue. This has to do with extraterrestrials. They knew, and they were monitoring that group for many, many years, since 2002, I think, when it started. They were on it from the very beginning, and they were waiting for something to come out of it. And I don't know what came out of it, but I was one of the Easter eggs that hatched. So as soon as they saw what happened to Rex Bear, and as soon as they saw that he had an implanted dreamscape and was freaking out about it, and then went on and had Elizabeth April on the show, and then she validated it, the whole thing just set off the NSA, and then they started targeting me. And when you start talking about this, people think, oh, you're nuts, because they look at these people that have these YouTube channels, social media accounts, and they claim that they're targeted individuals. And if you listen to them, they ramble on and they ramble on, and you get to a very clear picture of what's going on is they're disassociating with reality. They don't know that the gang stalking that they just experienced is real or not. They think it is. It could have just been because they're in such a miserable state all the time from harassment that they found themselves in a negative social interaction, and something took place, and they've mistaken it for being stalked by some kind of government agents or provocateurs, paid or unpaid.
And then there are the other ones that are actually like disappear off the planet and no one knows where they've gone. And
well, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about people that have had these, that have been harassed by the government. A lot of these people can pinpoint what they did. If something is, I know somebody that, I don't know him personally. I have a friend who knows him. He's his neighbor, worked for the Internal Revenue Service, was an auditor, found out that several Maryland politicians weren't paying taxes and hadn't paid taxes in many years, and that they were given an illegal exemption. And when he brought it up to, well, he found this out later, but when he brought it up, when he followed the whole case and did all the paperwork and started it, his supervisor told him to shred the documents. We're not going to investigate this. These are protected people. These are specially privileged people who are part of the criminal empire that runs this country. Now, he didn't say this, but it's the way it is. And that they do not have to pay taxes. And you need to stop looking into this, or you're going to be fired. And you need to go after Joe Sixpack and his wife and investigate them and try to get a few dollars out of them that they can't afford to pay, and accuse them of tax evasion when these scumbag politicians don't have to pay taxes. And so what he did was he kept all the documents and he hid them, and he got fired, and he sued, and he got a severance package until this day. And this man is in his early 80s, I think now. He is still harassed by the Treasury Department. He lives on like an inlet. My friend's house is directly across the street. Behind my friend's house is the water. They literally park a boat several times a year from Missouri, of all places. It has Missouri on the side of the boat, and it's an old boat, but on the back of the boat, it's got a bunch of like little miniature, it's got antennas and just a bunch of like electronic devices, something, and it parks with the back away from the house, but you can get it from different angles. And I had pictures of it. But this guy complains that they're doing something. They're sending frequencies and beams of light, and he's picking up voices in his head that they're talking to them. And it's a couple of jarheads with crew cuts park out in the water. And they parked out at one time. It was 20 degrees here. It was during that cold snap when we had the Gulf oil spill and it stalled the Gulf Stream, and it was freezing here, and the whole entire East Coast was under deep freeze. Couple of jarheads sat in the same boat that keeps coming back several times a year. They dropped anchor and were sitting in the middle of this little area. I think I'm not sure what part of Maryland's waterway. It's off the Chesapeake Bay. And they sat out there in 20-degree weather for 2 weeks and did not move the boat and lived on the boat. It must have been the shittiest assignment you could possibly get. Freezing your ass off and having to go in a porta potty just to serve evil for the government for a paycheck and a pension and some health benefits.
Well, see, and that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you've got to question what you're doing as a job too. If you're doing something like that, and what are you getting out of it? As you say, a paycheck. You're not getting anything really meaningful out of it, are you?
They probably don't even know why they're doing it. But if you're attacking a 70 or 80-year-old man or anybody
Yeah.
with directed energy weapons, and you don't know why
Mm,
you're doing it because it's
mm,
compartmentalized information, you're just told to do it, you are a piece of garbage. And I'll say, I would like
mm.
to say worse, but I don't want to turn this podcast into a profane rant.
Well,
I'm
look what
sick
they
and
did in
tired of it.
Australia here with, sorry, look what they did in Australia here with the protesters in Canberra. I mean, a lot more people turned up at that protest rally than they ever fathomed. And then they decided to bring out the, what is it, LRA? Is it
Well, there's elf
LRAD?
waves, there's
Well, this is
extremely
like a
low
big
frequency.
microwave thing, and it's the
Yeah,
one that the military use,
it's a
and
directed
they
energy weapon.
literally, yeah, they literally
It makes you
fried the
sick.
kids. Yeah, it
Right.
made them sick, but you should see the burns on these people. It's just, it's horrendous.
I
And then
wish I would have seen that.
in our Senate, they actually turned around and they asked the police chief, was this actually undertaken? Did you actually do this to the Australian people? Yeah, these protesters that were at a rally, a peaceful rally, and
Yeah,
you've gone and done this. And he said, oh, well, look, we'll have to, get to the bottom of this. And I just thought, you know
yeah, right.
exactly what you were doing because you were there. Not only that, the phones were the same. The people were trying to ring out and they were trying to take videos of the amount of people there and send it to their friends and stuff. And when they got on the phone, there was this high pitched screech in their ear. And I mean, it was really, really offensive. There's
Oh
no other
yeah.
word for it. So yeah, you talk about, yeah, and of course they don't want people gathering in that kind of a scenario. And they've certainly put a stop to that in Australia because of all the flooding.
Well, that's the superficial level of the
Mm,
threat.